Okay, folks, so we're back at it. Welcome back from March break. Ready for that last push. And again, we're going to be talking about um, our 21C competencies. So the 21st century learning competencies, and the next one, and the second to last, or close to that, is self-regulation. And we've seen this phrase before. This is one of those learning skills that's on the report card. And self-regulation, what does that mean? What does that look like? It's a real big push in our board this year. In fact, it, along with collaboration, are sort of the two big ones um, as far as those skills that people are working on. So let's take a little bit of a look at what that means exactly. So what are the big ideas around self-regulation? Pretty straightforward, really. The first one is that if you're looking at creating, again, if you're looking at creating an activity in which you want the students to work on, or you want to explicitly have the students working on self-regulation, the first thing is that it should be a long-term activity, because really you can't have much about self-regulation if they're working on an activity that's going to take them one period, or it's going to be a day's homework or something like that. It's going to be a long-term. So we're talking about a project here. So really what you're looking at is their ability to manage themselves is going to happen over a longer period of time than just a day or a period or whatever that is. So the first part is that activity is a long-term activity. This is very clear to everybody. This is very common. Clear learning goals and success criteria. And this is, again, a lot of people have this or do this in certain ways, whether they give a rubric, at the beginning or whatever. But it's very clear, it's very overt, it's very explicit that the learning goals and success criteria are there. And let's just look at those things again, right? The learning goals. The learning goals is not necessarily or is not in any way really a rubric. The learning goals is this is what our goal is for this project over long term, and establishing that at the beginning to say this is what we hope to accomplish and hope to learn, not to have a product at the end, but what's the learning that you hope to accomplish. That has to be overt. Don't keep that a secret. Um, Make that overt. And then that success criteria. What does success look like at the end? What do I need to do to be able to succeed at this? And be clear about it. And remember, it's wrong to assess something that you didn't teach. So if you're marking a paper or something like that, and you haven't been very specific about style, about the structure of it, you can't mark that content. You can't mark that structure. You can't say, this isn't the stuff I was looking for if you didn't let them know that ahead of time. So the idea here is this is where the teacher's influence is really huge, is that you can create this. This is where the work is really for the teacher at the beginning. If you're looking at a unit that's supposed to be about self-regulation, that isn't about students learning stuff that the teacher tells them, but it's actually about real self-regulation. The work for the teacher is in creating those learning goals and that success criteria and being explicit about that. There has to be an opportunity for self-direction, lifelong learners. But this idea about self-direction, and this is misinterpreted quite often, and this is coming from my own experience, teaching for 12 years at Mary Ward, which is called the Self-Directed Learning Center. And I would say in a lot of ways, a lot of the stuff we did at Mary Ward had nothing to do with was not self-directed. There was maybe self-paced there a lot of the times, but is there really true self-direction? Meaning, and what does this mean? This is key here. Self-directed means that the student could choose a direction other than the one you intended, other than one that the teacher intended, and that they're able to do that. And that's a hell of a thing sometimes for teachers to do. So the opportunity to be self-directed means they need to be able to get lost along the way, and you can help find their way back, or to right the ship or whatever. But or are they going to choose a direction that you didn't even think about, and that you're okay with that? So that's part of it. So it seems pretty simple, but it really isn't. It can be rather complex and something to think about. And then here's a big one: opportunity to revise work based on feedback. And we'll get into a little bit more detail about what that feedback means. But the idea here is that that's where again, the teacher's work is in creating those learning goals and success criteria. Sorry about that. But I'm just going to get my thing. That's one. But there's where the work of the teacher is in a unit that's about self-regulation. So it should be very student-driven. The feedback is where it is. And again, this is a big push for us this year, obviously, is with descriptive feedback. And when does that happen? And so again, giving feedback at the end and not having the ability to revise that work really, and I did it myself, to be honest with you, but the more that I've been able to sort of look at it and really consider it is completely useless. Um, I've made the comparison before. That's an autopsy report, really. When you give feedback at the end and you don't let them do anything with it, what's the point of that? I mean, that's really um, something that we have to work on, and something that in the idea of self-regulation, because what you're doing is you're giving them feedback, and then they're going to say, okay, now I'm going to do something with it. There's a responsibility for them to do something to it. Um, so that's why that's so important. Now let's take a look at this again. And again, it's the same sort of thing. Question, ask yourself the question. If it's yes, you move down. If it's no, it's where you are. So is this a long-term activity? And it doesn't need necessarily, again, folks, this is key, is that we're not looking at every single activity has to have all of these competencies in them. It's impossible. It would be ridiculous. But if you're going to say, yeah, you know what, I'm really going to assess, I'm really going to look at, I'm really going to hope that they develop their own self-regulation, it has to be a long-term activity. So if it's no, it's entry. And I would even go so far as to say that if it's not a long-term activity, you're not even thinking self-regulation, so you wouldn't even be on here. And then you move down. Do the students have learning goals and success criteria in advance? And I would say at the very, very beginning. And again, this is where the majority, this and the feedback is the majority of those teachers' work, is creating very clear learning goals, or, co-created, oftentimes is a good one. So that creation point of those learning goals and success criteria. Do they know in advance what success looks like at the end? And success may not be the right answer. Again, this is where we're talking about self-regulation and self-direction. It may not be a yes answer at the end. It may not even be the right answer at the end. It's about that learning that goes on in the process. And that moves on to the next one. So if you want to get past that adaptation level, do students have the ability to be self-directed, responsible, lifelong learners? And this is obviously the language of the Catholic graduate expectations. But again, self-direction means that they may go in a direction that you didn't plan as a teacher, and that you got to be okay with that. And so there's a certain amount of release of responsibility, of release of influence, of release of what do you want to call it, guardianship, I suppose, over the assignment, over the work, over the curriculum. But you got to be okay with it. And that's what the self-regulation is about. It may go some ways that you never knew. I would argue that the best ones are assignments, are, the best products that you're going to see are stuff that you didn't even see coming. And having been in that situation a few times in which students came up with something that I never would have thought of, and I never would have gone there. It's so, that was real. That was really impressive stuff. And then do students have the ability to revise work based on feedback? And again, here is the feedback doesn't necessarily have to come just from you. And this is where you can mix this in with some of the other competencies. We talked about skilled communication before, and that you're looking at other things. You're looking at other. You're trying to get feedback from outside of your immediate world. So are they utilizing? This is where you might want to utilize technology. Are they utilizing technology to get feedback from experts across the world? Are they getting feedback from are they auditioning? Are they practicing? Are they rehearsing their product and putting it on the internet for people to comment on? Are they getting those sorts of things? Are they getting peer evaluations? Are they getting feedback from you as the teacher? Again, this is where a teacher may, in a self-regulated assignment, really have the most input is through that descriptive feedback, with the sense of getting that feedback is then going to allow them to do something with it. Let's stop the autopsy reports that say, okay, let's go through what happened to you, how you died. Great, you're still dead, but what good does that do? So this is about self-regulation. I want to be very, very clear on what we've talked about every single time I've done these videos. These competencies, these 6 competencies that we'll kind of review again, are not meant to be something that you look at for every single assignment, in that you're saying, I want to touch all of these all the time. Can't happen. And even if you were to look at assignment and say I'm at the entry level, that's not a condemnation. Sometimes you got to be at the entry level. That's where you're at. This activity isn't going to be long term, so I'm not thinking about self-regulation. But the idea is that perhaps you can look at your own assignments and your own courses and say, this is the one where I thought I was really touching self-regulation. Am I doing it? And can I look at this and tweak and adapt and add something or take something away sometimes? or change the order of how I do it, and all of a sudden, I'm moving along that spectrum. It's not meant to be evaluative. It's meant to say, what could I do? It's reflective. And again, gives you something to consider when looking at those skills necessary for a 21st century learner. So again, that's self-regulation. There's a spectrum of comfort. This is all part of the structure that's around the next lesson. It's part of Project Next. So enjoy. I hope to see something from it.